so we'll start. For those of you who is the first time was here, I should give the three fundamentals.
Oh, that suits me, because I haven't been here for a long time.
Oh my God. Okay, let's try to be serious here. So tonight we're looking at the idea of the solstice, winter solstice. And I was thinking we will look at it from 3 points of view. We'll look at the solstice from the external point of view, which is what happens in the cosmos. Then we'll look at the solstice from an inner point of view, see what it means from an energetic point of view, what the solstice means for us, human, on a practical level. And then we'll look at the solstice from a transformative aspect. What does it mean, really, for the human? All this symbolism that we're imbued in, which is the cosmos. And one of the things that I found in one of the books that I thought was kind of interesting, and he said that the visible universe is the symbol of innermost truth. Oh, you don't have it on the handout, but it's something that I found. And I read it again. The visible universe is the symbol of innermost truth. So, in a sense, when we talk about this solstice, it's something that happens in the visible cosmos, but it has to have a relationship also to the inner cosmos, which is the human, and then the transformative aspect. Usually the transformative aspect is what connects the two, the micro and the micro, into one unit and one functioning whole. So that you get that idea of synthesis in action, in a sense. So everybody, I really don't need to go into any details here because everybody knows about the solstice. Of course, there are many factors that come into play into a solstice, but we'll look at 3 main factors. And one factor is the sun, then the earth, the axis of the earth, because the axis is tilted and the earth goes around its own axis, that shows different phases to the sun at different time. And then we'll look also at the idea of the space in which all this happens, because all this happens within space. And then space, you have different kind of spaces. You can have the external space, and then you have the internal space. Jerome, you like handouts?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, we'll look at these 3 aspects: the earth, the sun, and the space. So the earth, of course, is the external planet that we live on, Mother Earth. But also Earth is the element that we clothe ourselves into. The Earth, in a sense, represents karma and klesha. What do I mean by that? Karma is the karma of humanity. Humanity, as a host of mind being, has created through our choices, causes, and conditions, a certain kind of, we would say, if you use the Bhagavad Gita language, a kshetra, a field of action. And in this field of action, earth represents the element in which we clothe ourselves in, from an objective point of view, our skin, etc., etc. So the earth, it's a manifestation of karma and klesha. Then you have the other aspect that we have here, the sun. The sun represents usually the higher aspect of ourselves, the higher aspect in nature. We would say spirit, spiritual energy, whatever name you want to call it. That's the which inspires us and informs us and enlightens us. And then you have space. Space is very interesting because space, it's where everything happens. If you didn't have space, this wouldn't be possible. So space is the facilitator. It's kind of the screen behind everything so that everything can happen. So when we talk about space, at least in this ancient philosophy, you have different kind of spaces. You have the space that we know, then you have Chittakasha, the space of the mind, and then you have Mahakasha, which is the great space. The great space is connected with what they call great prana, Mahaprana, which is, in Theosophy, we would say is almost similar to the Absolute. Mahaprana, Mahakasha, universal mind, the space in which everything happens. So these are the elements that, you know, the solstice happens in. So when you start looking at this from a personal point of view, in a sense of the human in evolution, you're just looking at the earth. That's the place that we incarnate in. This is the body. But the body, we know, it's not just the physical body. There is a subtle body, and there is a mental body. So does the earth. The earth has these different bodies itself too. And the same thing with the sun, and the same thing with space. So in a sense, when we talk about this, the solstice, I know. Now let's focus now on the earth aspect of the solstice. The earth has, again, three aspects that are important to keep in mind. You have the earth per se, the axis, right? Then we have the rotation around the axis, and then you have the face of the earth. The faces are the faces that are exposed to the sun. What does it mean for a human being? An axis, a rotation, and the face. We could look at it so many point of views. I'm just giving you what the fruits of what I gather. Then everybody might have a different interpretation. But one interpretation is the axis is motivation. When we wake up in the morning, what is the motivation that we have? What's the motivation that inspires you to live this day? So motivation is the axis around which the day goes by. So you start with motivation. That's the axis of the earth, and that's the axis of the human being. What motivates us? Intention. Then next to motivation, you have the rotation of the earth. The earth rotates around its own axis. So if you bring it back to the human, that motivation, which usually goes with what we call ethics, it's what you rotate around it. It's a center of focus. And then the last one that we have here is the facet, the different faces of the earth that are exposed to the sun. And that, in a sense, is, you can look upon it. Tina, do you have the paper? Thank you. Here, what I wrote down. The faces is what gets exposed to the sun. And in a sense, that's the faces of our mind, the surface of the mind. What do I expose my mind to? And that's the question that each human, each one will answer to this question themselves. But these are three factors that are very important for the human in daily life, and they are very much stressed in the solstice. Because in the solstice, yes, Anna?
Sorry, you said three, so it's the axis, the faces,
the axis, the rotation around the axis.
Okay, axis, rotation,
and the faces. Yeah, the faces of the earth. So the axis, again, is the motivation. That's the axis.
Okay. And what is the rotation? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the rotation is the magnetic field that you create.
Okay.
Because you have a motivation and then you have rotation. Rotation creates a magnetic field of movement, dynamism, something that is dynamic.
Oh, I know, yeah.
So that's why we have a theosophical movement in a sense. Theosophical movement implies movement, implies creation of magnetism, ideas coming together. Mm-hmm. So that's
attraction.
That's part of it.
Yeah,
that's part of it. Yes. And then the faces. The faces, in a sense, I described it as an aspect of mind. That mind that exposes itself or not, depending to our choices, to the sunbeams, to the light of the sun.
Would that be equivalent to action?
I'm sorry?
Would that be equivalent to the action to take?
Yeah. It is a kind of an action because it's a choice. You make a choice to have your mind enlightened by the sun of the inner self, or you make a choice of not to be responsive to it. And you go in different ways. I mean, those are all choices that we make. So, in a sense, when we're talking about the solstice, especially the winter solstice, because the idea of the winter solstice is, quote unquote, the sun dies and is resurrected. The days start becoming a little longer. So it's the death of the sun, and at the same time is the resurrection of it. So in a sense, if you want to take it back to the human, is the death of the old human, the death of our old way of thinking, old habits being replaced by a new life, by the promise of what is possible for the human, the horizon that opens up to the human being. So in a sense, if you take that process of the winter solstice as transformative, as the inner process, you start seeing the possibilities of that. Now, if you want to look at it from a point of view of the last point of view, the alternative, the transformative, which would be the fruit of the process. The fruit of the process is Buddhahood, is enlightenment. And when you get to the fruit, then you have no more separation. You don't have sun, earth, and space. The Trinity that once was very much delineated as something so different, it unites it into a oneness. Because now they initiate, or the Christ consciousness that develops, it's a consciousness that is part of the whole, fills the whole. Yes, Jerome?
Mahaprana?
Mahaprana, yes. Mahaprana would sustain that process. Yes, I would say so. Mahaprana is the energetic aspect of the Absolute. Although we never talk about it because we said the Absolute, it doesn't have any, no this, no that, no that. But in itself, the Absolute is containing the Trinity of space, energy, and of course the Absolute. But it's beyond what we understand as energy and space. That's why it's called Mahakasha and Mahaprana. Maha means great. In the transactions, Blavatsky says that the Absolute is almost equivalent to universal mind.
And
So that
prana, I'm sorry?
prana is the life energy.
Oh, okay.
Prana is the life energy that imbues everything that lives. But you have different kind of pranas according to the different levels of consciousness. Okay, so you have a prana that is called Mahaprana, which is similar to what in Theosophy called the Absolute. The Hindus call it Brahman or Parabrahman, that which is beyond. It means it's beyond duality, it's beyond black and white, time and space, as we know them, beyond that. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible to know. The human has within himself the capacity of merging himself with it.
So it would be something that is incomprehensible?
To this finite mind.
Yeah.
Not incomprehensible, period.
Period. But
No. Incomprehensible for the finite mind. Otherwise it would be a horrible joke. I mean, what would be the point of being living in a place that it's incomprehensible for us? It is incomprehensible for the finite, yes. It would be like trying to put the ocean into a cup.
Yeah.
The finite mind is the cup, and the Absolute is the ocean. the cup can only contain only a little bit.
So much, yeah.
So the process,
limited.
yes, it's limited. So the process that we're talking about here is dissolving little by little the cup, so that that which was containing the cup now goes back into that which came from. So the process of wisdom is not so much a process of acquisition, it's a process of dissolution. Because according to this ancient philosophy, we are that. I'm not aware of it because I covered it up with a lot of ignorance that I carry with me. But the process of wisdom is getting rid of the veils that cover that which we are.
That wouldn't say veil.
Huh?
I was going to say that actually.
Yeah, that's it. You see, yeah. So that's the idea. When we talk about wisdom, it's something that we are. We already come with it in a sense. We are it. That jnana. Many times HPB calls Theosophy jnana yoga. Jnana yoga is that process of non-dual wisdom, realizing that within you, and everything else is part of that. So that's the beauty of that. You don't go and have to develop it. It's already within you. It's like having this beautiful gold statue wrapped up in dirty clothing. The dirty clothing is our mind, that are full of afflictions, etc., etc. Once you remove the dirty clothing, the gold hasn't been affected by it at all. So there's an aspect of ourselves that is never affected by anything.
Or almost like being in a cocoon.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, cocoon carries the idea of isolation, and this is not isolation. It's not isolated. It's the sustainer of everything. But it doesn't get affected by what happens around it. It's a very deep idea, and in the Secret Doctrine, she gives 3 fundamental ideas, and she talks about these 3 aspects, and she talks about the aspect that could be represented in abstract motion and abstract space. The first fundamental idea. So, motion and space carry the idea of energy, and of course space, where it moves. So more or less, that's we're moving, and we jumped around a little bit, but we're not many people. We're going to keep the class very flexible. So whatever question, whatever comments, it's welcome. You don't interrupt me. Okay. Yes, go for it.
I was about to say, am I interrupting?
No, you're not. You're
because
not.
I have issues with that. I need to stop it.
No, you're not interrupting. And if you do, I'll tell you.
Please,
Yeah,
so.
sure, I will.
Be as simple as
But
possible.
you don't interrupt at all.
Okay.
We're going to keep this very flowing. Go for it,
I
Jack.
was just going to say that in a way we're symbolizing potentiality, aren't we?
Excellent. Yes, that's a good word, potentiality. And that's what the sun represents, in a sense, represents the potential within each one of us. Yes, very good, very good. Yes, potentiality. Don, do you have your hand up?
No.
No, okay.
Really, I was thinking, what I was just thinking as you were coming to me was that really it's a process of changing ignorance to knowledge.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
So we go from what they call avidya, ignorance, not knowing, to vidya, which is knowledge. Now, the secret, though, it's very interesting because as long as we move on a dualistic world, we always think of knowledge here and not knowledge here, etc., etc. And that's fine. I mean, it's useful. It's the developmental aspect. We develop the capacity of discerning, etc., etc. Eventually, along the path, the students discover that they're not two. No two. They say, the great teachers say, no two. There's no vidya and avidya. You only have one that manifests itself as ignorance when we're covered up with selfishness, affliction. And it manifests as knowledge when the veils disappear. So you actually have one thing. In the avidya, in ignorance, resides knowledge. and within the knowledge resides avidya if it's covered, if it's done with separateness. So in a sense, that's the idea that they bring up these great teachers. Just know two. Every time you start seeing two, then you're in for a lot of pain. Because then you start dividing subject and object. I like this, I don't like that. I am averse to this and I love this. Likes and dislikes are going to create a lot of friction in our lives. So eventually the student, along the path, it doesn't happen immediately, but along the path, you start realizing that what you described, oh, I don't like this, I like that, eventually it comes through equanimity and becomes one.
You can become disappointed if you are like that. If you're like, well, I only like this and that's what it's going to be like. If you have all these expectations,
Yes.
then you tend to become disappointed.
Yeah. That's it. And disappointment creates poison within
Yes,
you.
I agree.
And anger.
And anger.
And anger, as the Bhagavad Gita says, creates terrible confusion. We kind of lose our center because now you're angry, and anger covers up. We're not capable of really choosing clearly.
Yeah, you lose control.
You lose control. Very good. Lose control.
Less than a human.
Huh?
We become less than a human.
We become less. Yeah. Carl. Good, I made enough. I gave them all up.
Close the door.
Let everybody in. Very good. Okay, and is everybody on board? I mean, is it clear so far, more or less, what we're trying to discuss as far as the solstice, you know? So let's go back to the outer cosmos. We look at the outer cosmos and we understand certain things through observation. We observe. And as our technology improves, we create better and better machines to observe the outer cosmos and to know more about the solstice, the constellations, and everything that is out there. Now, the inner process is start building, and this we talked about so many times already, but start building an inner technology. As we created the outer telescope to look at the stars, then you start creating an inner telescope to look at the space within. Now, when we look at the space within, the thing is very interesting because it seems that it's corroborated by the great Upanishads and many other teachings. They often say that the space within the heart is way bigger than the space outside. So it's, for us, if you look at this literally, you say, how can it be possible? The heart is such a small organ. What is he referring to? It's definitely not referring to the space of the physical heart. But I think it refers to what Jerry was brought up earlier, the space of potentiality. That inner space of the human, the potential of what we could be. That space is infinitely bigger, in a sense, than the outer space. So in the inner process of knowing what the solstice means for us in daily life, you start building an inner telescope. A telescope, a lens that goes within. Now, how do we build that? And the great teachers left us in the paramitas 3 keys. All the paramitas are wonderful, but I'm going to pick just these 3 because they're looked upon as the great training. And the great training is Shila. But Shila also, let's not stop at Shila just what it says there, the key of harmony. Shila is used also as an umbrella term for all ethics. That's what Shila means also. So it's the key of harmony, but it's also an umbrella term that includes everything that is ethical. So that's how you start building the telescope. You start building the telescope through ethics. Then the other aspect of the telescope that is needed is dhyana, the other paramita, dhyana or samadhi, meditation, calmness, serenity. That's another way to look at it. And then the last one is prajna, or wisdom, the seventh paramita. So you have these three. These are the three trainings to build an inner telescope. So we go back to ethics, to go back to make a connection with our the solstice. Let's go back to ethics and look at ethics on Earth. The Earth going around the sun. So ethics becomes the axis. We talked about earlier that the axis represented motivation. So ethics becomes the axis around which you build your life. Your practice, your thinking, your acting, what you say, it's based on that. And that becomes your axis. Then with ethics, you have what it says here, rotation. Rotation implies that movement that dhyana or meditation allows for. Because what meditation does, it removes or jiggles or thaws out what used to be frozen. My frozen conceptions. And they're totally frozen. The rotation of it, or the thawing out through meditation, allows for the frozen concept to become fluid. Everybody knows this. You know that if you put a little sugar, cube of sugar in coffee, the faster you rotate it, the faster it's going to dissolve into the coffee. So that's the rotation that meditation brings in. It brings in that powerful strength that is able to dissolve our sugar cubes of our congealed ideas, concepts. And then the phases of the earth, where the earth is going to turn to the sun. That's prajna, that's wisdom. So you, through ethics, samadhi, and wisdom, you start building an inner telescope. You start building an inner technology, if you want to call it that way. It's an inner technology that allows you to finally penetrate the mystery of your being. To go inside. But now you go inside without distortions. Because one thing is to go inside full of distortions and mud and you cannot see anything. Another thing is to be able to go inside with full clarity so that you know the causes. You know what the effects will be, etc., etc. So anyway, this is just few thoughts, just few ideas on this. And now we're going to open to discussion and improvements. So everybody, please, participate and contribute. Go for it.
What would you say helps with to get rid of some of those distortions?
Very good. What helps to get rid of some of the distortions that we're subject to? Okay, what does the class think about? Would you help us a little bit? Yes, Dawn.
Focus.
Very good. Focus. Because the lens of your inner telescope has to be focused. Because if the lens is out of focus, everything's going to be distorted.
And what helps to focus? Sometimes it's hard to. Sometimes
she's a tough customer. She's not happy with this book. Okay, very good.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, so focus from Dawn, and now Vicky.
I think also choice, activity, some sort of purposefulness inwardly.
Yes. Very
so
good.
We're not stagnant.
Yes. Very good. Purposefulness. To have a meaningful life, right?
Yeah.
That helps tremendously.
These are all actions about the axis itself.
Very good. They're all about the axis. Very good. So the axis brings back purposefulness and focus. Because this is your axis in daily life. You want to be focused and you want to have a
So
purpose.
purposefulness helps to focus, and that focus helps get rid of those.
Yes, and they all in a synergy. They all work in synergy. The more purposeful is your life, the more focus you have. The more focus you have, the more it's going to feed your purposeful life. So they work in a synergy. They're not three things separated. Nothing is separated in life, in reality. Everything works together in a perfect interconnection. Who had the hand up? Car.
I just want to add deep desire.
Deep desire, yes. Yeah. Desire first arose in it. Yes. A desire to wanting to change. A deep desire of really learning and practicing. Yes. Okay, so I think yes, deep desire. That aspect of desire that is creative, that is sustained.
That ambition, that want, a drive.
A drive. More than ambition, because ambition
Yeah.
can fall into a
Yeah,
mental affliction.
Yeah, it can fall into
Yeah.
kind of like a materialistic thing, and
Yeah.
you don't have that, and you don't...
Yes. And me, I'm better than
Yeah,
the other person because I'm so ambitious.
yeah.
Okay? So ambitions can fall into something that's a mental affliction. But the strong desire, the strong drive to know who you are, to discover, and to help people in the process. Because remember, we talked about three main trainings. The three main trainings are ethics, samadhi, meditation, and prajna, wisdom. You cannot have one without the other. You can have this huge drive or desire. If you're a selfish person, then it's going to be very destructive. Because it's going to be, the desire is going to be geared toward me, 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 me. I want more for me, for me, for me. So you have to integrate somehow ethics into your meditation. If you integrate ethics, gives you the focus, so that your meditation, when you enter into meditation, the mind is already prepared. Because you cannot sit and meditate if you had a very distracted mind. If the mind has been very distracted during the day, flying here, there, and then you want to sit and meditate, forget it. There is a culture, there's an article by Judge, it's called Culture of Meditation. So there is a culture, a cultivation. So during the day you cultivate those states of mind that are very useful. Huh?
Is that a grasshopper? Cricket?
Yeah, we do have grasshoppers, but I don't want to crash.
Cricket.
Where is that? Okay. It's far from my feet.
Oh, it's not gonna hurt.
Okay. I don't want to hurt him. Jerry.
So we're really getting back to the theosophical idea of the oneself.
The oneself. Very good. Very good, Jerry. Yes, the oneself. The oneself in all the different aspects. Right?
Right.
Okay, very good. Yes, yes.
So thinking in a physical sense, that we're on this earth, this sun, and the tilting and the season, that sort of practical everyday quality of living on the earth.
Yeah.
Is all this is part of it, but then there's this time of year where something seems, we sense it as humans, that there's a little different quality in everything that we've been talking about. Is it kind of bringing it together in terms of this? It's not that it's abstract, but that it's actual. That's
Very good. Yes. 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 And I would say, going on with what you just opened up, is that idea of death and rebirth, but in the best way. The death of the sun, the death of old habits, and the regeneration. The coming together of the new man, the new woman, that promise of the future. Go for it, Gerald.
Well, if you persevere with some kind of steadfastness,
There
you
you go.
begin to gradually activate a type of mahaprana in your life, a kind of activity, a kind of energy in your life.
Excellent. Perseverance. So that's another thing, when we're talking about building the inner technology, perseverance is another great factor. because you cannot build anything if you do it a little bit today, maybe a little bit in 5 months, and a little bit in 3 years. Procrastination. No. Wait, we're talking about you. Yes.
Procrastinate too much. Well, at least lately, anyway.
Yeah. So that's the idea. It kind of a discipline. You know, you don't want to be like, oh yeah, you don't want to use the whip, because the whip doesn't work very much. But a kind of an inner discipline that arises spontaneously within you, because you're doing something that you love. You're knowing who you are. What better project than to know yourself? Because by knowing yourself, you know everything. Because the one self is the self of all, as Jerry was pointing out earlier. So that's the best project. Go for it.
I was wondering, we have these 4 points of the winter solstice,
Yes.
summer solstice, and the equinoxes.
Yes.
What would you think corresponds inwardly with regards to meditation with these 4 crucial points? Because it seems to be a shift of states of consciousness, shift of energy, which takes place as these 4 different points.
What I've read about it, and this, each one probably has different point of views on it. The equinox is a very special moment too, because you have the day and the nights are both 12 hours. So in a sense, it represents a moment of union of the dark and the light. So you have a moment that you can almost take it into a process of meditation of non-conceptuality. The two, the winter and the summer in the equinox become one. You have that one moment, 12 and 12. Day and night are completely imbalanced. While in the solstice and in the winter solstice and summer solstice, you have the longer days or the longer nights. So that from that point of meditation, that's what you want to bring into that equilibrium. But the equinox do not happen in a vacuum. They happen because you had a solstice. So you need the energy of the solstice to get to that place of equinox. And then you want to lose that balance again, in a sense, because you want to go back and experience and then bring it back into balance. So it's that process, like walking. You lose your balance to gain your balance, and through that you move. Yes?
So would you then say that, for example, the spring equinox will be the potentiality, and the fall equinox will be the realized potentiality?
Yeah. You can definitely look at it like that. Yes, Saramon.
Yeah, can you tell us something about the mythological 3 days that the sun died?
Yes.
And on the 3rd day, the sun rebirthed.
Yes.
He died by sunset.
Yes. Yes. For 3 days, when the sun comes down, it doesn't go back up immediately. After 3 days, it starts going up gradually, little by little. And that's why a lot of esoteric Christianity talks about the Christ that was on the cross, died, and the 3rd day is resurrected. Meaning that the sun is coming back into the orbit. So some esoteric Christianity looks at that.
But what is the relationship between the mythological form and our?
Well, you came late, man. We talked about it half an hour before you came in. The mythological aspect, the connection between that and that's what we've been talking about. Does anybody have the hand up? Yes.
I think also, I could be wrong, that HPB says that in ancient Egypt there was an understanding of this much more than in a later time. And so the idea that there would be the 3 days with the rebirth was seen as a much deeper spiritual than it became later on, which really became more psychological and the little baby and all the stuff that goes along with that. But you start thinking of the deep meaning that it might have had to some cultures and how powerful it would have been. With that 3 days of
That's very good. Very good. Yes. Especially if you look at the 3 days from the point of view of hours, you multiply 24 by 3, you have 72. 72, it's an incredible number as far as inner psychology, because we have supposedly in the subtle body 72,000 nadis, the nadis through which all the energy of the cosmos and the energy of the man move into. So when you look at the 3 days, you start looking at the 3 days in a way that is, as you said, deeper. You can go from the subtle body, and then you can go to the spiritual aspect of it. Yes, Jerome?
Well, for 3 days, things kind of hang in the balance.
Yes.
And then after that 3 days, it begins to move
Yes.
in the orbit and counteract earlier stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Any other comment? Okay. Then we can move on. All right. So now the other thing is that everything that is manifested is a manifestation of pristine awareness, or the self, as you said. So eventually the student develops what we would call pure vision. Pure vision, not because I'm so pure, it has nothing to do with that. Pure vision means the capacity of seeing the causes that were set in motion. The pure vision is the vision that penetrates behind the veil of non-reality. And you start seeing reality as it is, with no superimposition. And that, in a sense, is the culmination of the equinoxes and the solstice. That's the real birth of the Buddha nature, the Christ nature, the spiritual nature within us. Because in a sense, if you look at the solstice and the equinoxes from a point of view of this ancient philosophy, they're all 4 aspects of the same thing. And as Eva was brought it to us, to our attention, they do correspond to the fourfold dhyana. Do you remember, right? The voice of the silence. She talks about the fourfold dhyana. Dhyana, the process of meditation, has 4 aspects. These 4 aspects are represented in the cosmos through the solstice, summer, and winter, and the 2 equinoxes. So when they come together as a synthesis, as a whole, then you have a full human. In the 4th dhyana, that's when breathing stops. When you reach the 4th dhyana, in a sense, there's no more breathing. Then you have a human that is transcended space and time as we understand it. Because through breathing, we are attached to this space and time. Yes, sir.
I kind of getting a picture here of the seesaw. And on one side of the seesaw is the materialistic side, and the other side is the spiritual. Mm-hmm. So when whichever side goes up, the opposite side goes down.
Yes.
And we're trying to seek this balance.
Yes. Yes.
That's what the equinox is.
Very good. Yes. The balance between spirit and matter. Did anybody else have the hand up?
Does equilibrium have any connection with spirit and matter and a kind of balance?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you well.
Do spirit and matter, the word equilibrium, have some kind of connection with balance between spirit and matter?
Yes, the equinox. It has definitely, that's why it's called equinox. It comes from equilibrium. Is that it comes from Latin. That it represents a balance between night and day. Equinox, nox as night. So the night and the day have the 12 hours each. So you have an equilibrium. So going back to what you said, it connects with what Jerry was saying, is that equilibrium between spirit and matter. When you have that equilibrium, then you have a human that is flourishing. A human that has that balance and works in the world, but it's not of it. It doesn't identify with what is going on.
It doesn't really belong to the world, does it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In the world, but not of it. That famous phrase. Yes, John?
Is that why HBB calls Judge the greatest of the exiles?
HBB calls Judge the greatest of what?
The exiles.
Of the exiles.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe somebody else might know. I don't know why HPB calls Judge the greatest of the exile, but I know he does. She does. But I don't know how to connect it with this. But there might be a way of connecting it. But at this moment, you went beyond me, Jerome. Yes, Rob. Help us out.
Isn't an exile somebody who has been taken away from their natural place, their home, for a reason?
Yes.
And that would be the teacher. So he's the greatest of the exiles in that sense. In other words, we might have influences that motivate us and change us and inform us. But exile is someone who is among the others, with the others. So it seems to me, the whole thing of the equinox is a sense of incompleteness. An unfinished business. You said desire. And I never thought of desire as part of that force that is generated at the solstice. But incompleteness is.
Yeah.
And unfinished business.
Yes.
And so then we have that return of the exile back into his world.
Yeah. So from one point of view, Jerome, you can say all of us are kind of in exile. We're exiled from our abode, the real abode that we come from. From one point of view, you can look at it like that. Although we've never been exiled in reality, because we've never been separated from it. In my ignorance, I feel that happened. But that could be one way. Thank you, Rob. Did you have your hand up?
Well, yeah, I was thinking somewhat along this line, the idea that when all of the monads are spewed out, whatever happens with all this energy that becomes individualized, goes out, that is, as others have said, a form of leaving home, of exile from our true self. And you might say that the sun that we see, that especially this time of year where it goes down, of course this illusion, it doesn't go down. You know, but that idea that sun is part of that energy and has come out from the unknown spiritual sun. So there's this process of emanation that isn't exile negatively, but is movement out and then movement back.
Going home again.
Yeah, so you get that in the yearly physical cycle too.
Yes.
We're back again at the winter solstice.
Yes. Very good. Okay, why don't we read, since we have a little handout, we haven't paid attention to it yet. And since we talk so much about the Mahaprana, let's read the last paragraph of the handout that we have. The last paragraph comes from a text called Sekodesha. Sekodesha Tika is a very ancient text. It's a commentary on some ancient aspects of the Kala Chakra. And this Sekodesha explained in a very beautiful way the birthplace of the Buddha. The birthplace of the Buddha is the same birthplace of the Christ. And that's what this winter solstice represents, the birthplace of the spiritual aspect of ourselves. So we're going to read this section and then see if you guys have any comments on it. Who wants to read? Oh, Chris. Why don't you read, Chris? The last paragraph, the birthplace of the Buddhas.
The birthplace of the Buddhas is the complete enlightenment in a single unchanging moment. When the mind, chitta, is established, satita, in the great breath, mahaprana, and the outer breath winds, pranavata, have stopped, when the divine senses have arisen and the group of fleshly senses has ceased, when the common sense objects have disappeared and the divine sense objects are seen, I see all, O King. There is nothing ever unseen by me.
This is explaining a process that is also in the Voice of the Silence, when she talks about the indrawing of the senses. when all the senses gets indrawn, and she gives all the different examples, and she gives some, she makes a connection with different sounds. You know, when you start, you hear the first nightingale sound, and it gives goodbye, blah, blah, blah. So each of the sounds represent an ingoing inside. Inner transformation, in a sense. But look at this. This says, the birthplace of the Buddhas is the complete enlightenment in a single unchanging moment. That is pretty powerful. A complete enlightenment in a single unchanged moment. So in one moment of consciousness, the person that is able to remove all the veils, in one moment of consciousness, you're there. You realize who you are. No more confusion, in a sense. Burn all the veils. Yes, not Jerome.
Just an idea.
Yes.
Everything is equivalent. It's the Latin. Everything is equivalent in the same body. Nothing is different. Everything is one.
Yeah, that's what the Gita says. When a piece of dirt and a piece of gold is the same for the sage. Yeah. Yes, Jeff.
So when you get this moment of balance,
yes,
does it stay?
Very good. Does it stay, or is fleeting? That depends.
It would stay, wouldn't it?
I'm sorry?
With an even higher development, it would stay, wouldn't it?
Yes, it depends on the soil that you built your home. If the soil that you built your home is solid and the foundations are very solid and based on ethics and wisdom, then it will stay. But if you build your home on very unstable soil, you might get there, but then something happens and sweeps you. So the way that I understand it is, to answer to your question, it could be permanent, depending upon the soil, the basis on which you built this enlightenment.
Contradict the concept that everything is in motion?
Very good. It's permanent, but permanent doesn't mean static. It's a permanent enlightenment that goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So enlightenment is not about static enlightenment. Enlightenment is becoming more and more and more clear all the time. So it's permanent, meaning that it's a permanent enlightenment, but within the permanent enlightenment, you have deeper and deeper understanding. We go with Ev and then Anel.
So that would be maybe similar to saying that the point of balance is never static, it's always moving.
The point of balance?
The point of balance is never static, but it's always in constant motion in that sense.
Yeah. My understanding would be like that. Nothing is static. So even the alignment, when we use those words, permanent, eternal, they're point of references. They're not meant to be something that, eternal, it's always going to be like that. It doesn't mean that. They're terminology that is being translated from Sanskrit, and in our language we have to use this term. In the original language, it carries a meaning of process, because Sanskrit is a language of process. So even though they might use the word eternal, implied in that is the process. Because eternal for them means a manvantara, or many manvantaras, but it's going to be limited to that, and then there will be something else. I don't know if I make myself understood, but that's the idea, usually. We go with Anel, and then we come back to the jar. Anel.
So is it circular or is it a linear?
It's neither. It's spiral. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. But every time it goes down. Yeah, it's a spiral.
Okay.
Every time it goes down, it never goes down to the lowest point that it was before. It's always a little higher, because that's what a spiral does. If you think of a spiral, when it goes down, it never goes down back to the previous point. It's always a little higher when it goes down, and that's the process of evolution. You always advance, in a sense. Okay, Jerry, now you have the floor.
Well, no, I was just going to add that all this is dealing with this manvantara.
Yes.
And who knows what happens.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't even know what's going to happen in this manvantara. Go for it.
Well, also, it's dealing with a particular personality. And if you have enlightenment as a personality, the next incarnation, you may or may not reach that level of enlightenment. Because HPV says there's many obscure Buddhas. An obscure Buddha is someone that achieved enlightenment, but they no longer have access to that enlightenment.
Exactly. That's an excellent point, because it goes back to his question. On what did that Buddha build the enlightenment? If the enlightenment was built on quicksand, then yeah, it might get lost. But if it was built on solid ground, based on discipline, focus, ethics, samadhi, you won't lose that. You won't lose that, because that perpetuates itself. Because you have ethics, samadhi, and wisdom. If you don't have these three pillars, it's going to be flimsy, whatever you build. Yes?
Is it a self-reproducing thought?
Is a self-reproducing thought.
And it kind of stops other thoughts.
Okay.
In mind,
Yeah. It's a kind of an antidote, a barrier. Yes, Colin, go for it.
Well, it seems it's always, enlightenment is, the container of enlightenment is what is or isn't. So, you might achieve enlightenment in a particular body, and later on, that body, because of decrepitude, might not be able to remember the enlightened achievement.
Yeah.
Or you could advance and get to a higher level of enlightenment. As physical beings, we are limited by our physicality.
Yeah.
And once you achieve that in a particular lifetime, you come back in another lifetime, you have to work up to a level where you have access to it again. That is the recurring cycles of enlightenment in any person's life.
The thing that determines that, though, is how deep the impression was in your mental continuum, in the ego. How deep impression was made by enlightenment. If the impression was very, very deep, you come back and you might pick it up very fast. You might be born in a family where this stuff is studied, and in 6, 7 years old you remember. Yoga is taught, meditation is taught. You might, because that impression is so deep, they won't be forgotten. If the impression is very, very subtle, not that deep, then it might take longer. Then yes, we're obscured by a lot of other stuff. So it goes back to the depth of what you've done, the motive. It goes back to us in everything. I mean, it just, how fast you're going to find it, how soon you're going to keep it, how long it's going to stay, it depends on us. Yes?
So all that contributes to the kind of karma you get in the next life.
Absolutely. Our action. There is a saying in Tibet that is kind of interesting. They say, if you want to know your past lives, look at your body. If you want to know your future lives, look at your mind. So, in a sense, it tells you, but then remember that mind and body, they're not looked upon as two different things. There is that fluidity. We think of mind and body as two different things. But for them, it's mind-body, like father-mother in the Secret Doctrine with the little thing in the middle. So that's what it is. So if you wanna see what your next life will be, well, look at the thoughts that you have. Look at the stuff that you study now. Look at what your motives are, and what the things that you do, the things that you say, etc., etc. How deep this stuff goes, and then you might have an idea. Yes.
But another aspect of the solstice is that the cycle of the ability to get help to reach enlightenment happens at this time of year. So in the sense, if you're enlightened, you could say that is a summer solstice. You reach more daylight than darkness. But at this point in the cycle, we're at more darkness than light. So it's only progression from this state. And we get to add an influence if we're aware of it. You don't go and start planting corn in November. At least not in the northern hemisphere.
That's excellent. That's it.
You need the help of the sunlight to awaken the life that's already in the seed. So it grows.
Very good. It goes back to that idea of tilling. How do you till the soil? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know all the factors? Because when we talk about tilling, it's about knowing when the sun, knowing the water, knowing all the components. Because especially in karma, you have the substantial cause and then you have the cooperating factors. The substantial cause is the seed that you planted. But then there are all the cooperating factors, which are the water, the soil, the sun, the wind, and all, etc., that contribute for the seed to sprout. So that's why it's so, for us, complicated to know what really karma is, because there are millions of different factors coming together. Hence, know your mind, because in the seed of thoughts is the plane of causes. We have Vicky first, and then we have Jerome, and then who else? Did I miss anybody? Vicky.
Well, I was thinking about this time of year. Again, we think of solstice.
Yes.
However, if we also saw the continuum up to January 4th,
yes,
which is the incarnation
New
of
Year,
Mars, and then even further to the spring equinox. I think this HPV in one of her articles talks about the astral life of the Earth being fresh at this time. So any effort we make now is going to have a deeper impact.
Very good.
Just as if we plant a seed in the right time, it's going to have a different impact than if we do it at the wrong time.
Very good. And that connects exactly what Colin was talking about. Knowing exactly this period. Very good. Yes. Yes. Jerome, you had your hand up.
Well, yes. Delmar Morgan is a good example of this. For about 30 years, he would plant his harvest in the winter.
Yeah.
And every May he would harvest it.
Yes. Yes.
So during that time, Delmar was missing.
What Jerome was referring to, just a little further detail on that. Delmar had a ranch in Kansas where they plant, as Jerome has said, a special, it's called winter wheat.
Yeah.
And so you plant it at a time that logically you don't plant, but it's the kind of seed that flourishes at just that time.
Yes.
So there may be corollaries to it in our own life.
Absolutely. Yes. And if you want to keep going with the idea of the seed, if you think about the seed for a while, we don't see anything coming out from the earth. So the same thing with us, a certain kind of patience when we start this path. Say, I don't see any change in myself. We become anxious, of wanting to see changes. They don't happen immediately. Just like earth, again, we learn from nature. There is a moment of silence, moment of absorption. So the seed is that moment in which we are trying to absorb what we have learned. And then eventually the little sprouts come up. So that what we have absorbed now comes into life, comes into manifestation with the practice of it. So in a sense, the seed is a great analogy for, spiritual life. And also for a certain kind of patience. Be patient with ourselves. Yes.
Well, if you surround the seed with good conditions, it has an amazing amount of power.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can break the seed apart. And so when you are able to look at it, if you do that without killing it, you can see that it broke the seed apart and now it's growing. So it's kind of a miracle in a way.
What does HPB say in the Secret Doctrine? the perfect flower has to die in order for the perfect fruit to come, or something like that.
That's it.
So that's the idea of that continuum. Hence, what we always talk about, no grasping. Because if you don't allow for the flower, for as beautiful as it is, has to die for the fruit to come up. If I want to grasp onto the flower and just think, oh, I want this flower, the flower is going to die in your hands. And then you shut the door for the next opportunity, for the fruit to come up. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, the process of the solstice and the equinox, going back to what Vicky was talking about, a continuum, it's also a teaching on not grasping, to start understanding the flow of life and let the flow of life go. Sustained by, again, wisdom and compassion. Not blindly. You just don't let things go blindly. No, it's not about that. Go for it.
Well, if we took the phrase, help nature work on with her, and she will reveal to you her secrets.
Yes.
So, I don't think we realize what a deep idea that is, that there's more to it than the surface. It takes us a while to find out just what it is nature wants us to do.
The key word in what you said, work on with her. It's about collaborating. It's about working together. It's about feeling that interconnection, interplay with everything. And then when you start really working together, then nature opens. And when we talk about nature, of course, we talk on all the different levels, from physical nature to spiritual nature. Yeah, you know, in Theosophy you go the whole gamut. But the idea that is brought in is the capacity of working together. And that's the key point. Yes, Jerry?
So, in a way, you might say to give the different elements what it needs. So you have the physical elements, they need certain things. You have the mental elements, they need certain things, and you've got the spiritual elements.
Yes.
And you have to have patience. For example, people either trying to lose weight or gain weight or gain health, they may not see the changes right away. They have to be patient.
Yes.
And let those things develop.
Yes. So we go back to the idea of patience. In the voice of the silence, Shanti.
Sweet but not enough.
Yes. It goes back to the idea of building the telescope. You know, the surface of the lake. Let's suppose that the mind is like a lake. If that lake of the mind is in constant turbulence, you're not going to be able to see through it, to see the bottom. So patience, the capacity of being patient, eliminates anger. Because anger is the fact that I'm not patient about things. Then I feel angry. And anger creates the undulation on the lake. And when the undulation on the mind comes up, forget it. There's no way of being able to really know who you are. Distortions. Usually when we're angry, we distort things. I could be angry at Anel and say, oh, Anel, she always does this. She's always late, blah, 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 blah. And maybe she was late once or twice. But I say, she's always late. Because anger distorts your capacity to see clearly. And that distortion, it's exactly this huge wave on the mind. Yes?
Well, patience is also the capacity to stay in the present moment.
Very good.
And not to be ahead in the mind in the future or wavering back into the past.
Very good. Yes, Jerry.
And to add to that goes back to the original statement about the axis.
Yes. The axis of the earth, which is our inner axis. Because the earth does the same thing that we do. The earth as an axis that turns, I'm coming with you, Jerome, turns around itself. But then has the bigger orbit that goes around the sun. So in a sense, we have the same thing. We have our inner axis through which, as a person, as a personality, we turn around that. But also there is the bigger orbit when we start waking up a little bit, which is the sun, the higher self. And then we start turning around that too. So at the same time, we turn around the human man, and at the same time we turn around the God man. So the initiate is the one that is capable to balance the physical personality with the spiritual personality. So the two are completely in focus. Just like the earth does. The earth is turning around itself and around the sun at the same time. In one moment of consciousness.
We do that too.
That's what I was trying to say, yeah. In one moment of consciousness, if you are, like it says here, if you're enlightened, in one moment of consciousness, you perceive the wide and the deep. The width, upaya, in the voice of the silence, skillful means. The compassion, it goes out. Prajna, deep, it goes into the depth. So in one moment of consciousness, you're able to embrace the width and the depth of everything. So that's the initiate. Jerome.
Well, I was thinking the idea that we too are revolving around ourselves.
Yes.
But we have an orbit that's at least 7 years in which we go complete what you would say the type of a portion of the personality of life. Let's say my life cycle was destined to be about 70 years. Well, then you go through 7 of those cycles before you reach the end.
Yeah, very good. Jerome was making reference to the 7-year cycle within ourselves, through which we go through many different changes. Very good, Jerome. Thank you.
Why don't we get along with each other better than we do?
You know, this is a really funny story. We're almost done. You can turn off if you want. But this is really funny. There was an interview with Boy George. I don't know if some of you might know who he was. He was a singer in the 80s. There was, and now it's
Culture Club?
Yeah, Culture Club.
Karma Chameleon?
Yeah, Karma Chameleon. And he's a Buddhist now. And then he made a song. He just made a song a few months ago or something like that about God. And the thing that he brought up that I thought was very interesting, he says, if you all have God within ourselves, within our heart, why don't we treat each other any better? So that's the idea. If God is within us, why I cannot treat people better? So if it's true that God is within us, let's begin by treating each other better.
There's a very funny true story, evidently. It's not in trying to review this, but just to share it. Teresa of Avila was a very, very strong mystic in the late Middle Ages, was riding a donkey across a stream, and the donkey slipped and she fell in the water and got all wet and ruined everything. And so she shook her fist at heaven and said, if this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few. And it's a reminder that actually in some way we do very well considering how hard life is. Yeah. We're always slipping into the stream and getting everything right.
Yeah. Okay, well that's a wonderful way to finish up. Thank you everybody for participating. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.